Bam! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of GeekVerse podcast. I am your host, Taylor, and today, very special, very special episode. You know what? Just because of the fact it's one of those rare Taylor solo reviews that doesn't happen that much anymore, but it's maybe it'll be a thing in the future. Maybe I'll try and get back into the game here and dish out some more Taylor perspectives. But we're here to talk about The Bad Batch. Season 3 has premiered, first 3 episodes. So we're going to be talking about all 3 of those tonight. Spoilers review. If you haven't seen the show yet, go check it out. If you haven't seen season 2 yet, go check that out. Go all the way to season 1, season 7 of the Clone Wars, even. Go watch these episodes. You can tune into the season 2 review, and I think I did partially a season 1 review. It's a little convoluted back there, but anyways, I digress. Other content that's going to be dropping this week, we have newscasts that we're going to be popping off here at the end of this week. We have our Halo weekly reviews that are still consistently dropping. And we also have a bunch of Patreon stuff. I mean, it's just a plethora of amazing content that everyone should listen to. It's great. Absolutely great over there right now to be a patron. And what else do we have? Dune is coming out next week. Cannot wait. There was a Madame Web review that the boys did. I was not there for that one, but go tune in to hear their perspectives on it. What else? There's so much. It's a great time to be a geek. Amazing. Oh, we just did an X-Men 97 trailer analysis deep dive review, so definitely go check that out. That's on our feeds as well. But yeah, I think without further ado, we can get into this right after I shout out our Patreon producers, Aaron Braden, April of Darkness, Jack Grant, Muds, and Sam. You folks are fan-freaking-tastic. Thank you so very much. Make sure you check us out. GeekVerse.ca is our home base. GeekVerseCast is our Twitter, or X, sorry. GeekVerse.ca is our home base, which I already said. And you can find us, YouTube, all the other social media channels, Patreon, you name it. Now, without further ado, we'll get into some brief non-spoiler thoughts here before we get into the main meat and potatoes of this. So, when dealing with the Bad Batch, that second season ended on such a, oh my goodness, it had me head over heels for just what was going on. And I'd say in a good way, but an emotionally compromised good way, because if you haven't seen that season, just tune out now. Otherwise, you're going to get spoiled. So, with the death of probably one of my top favorite Star Wars characters, I really grew to like that specific individual. I felt like I could kind of relate to them to a slight degree, and so when they were killed off, it was really sad. And now here we are dealing with the fallout of that and seeing where our characters are in the galaxy. They've suffered heavy losses trying to, I guess, deal with again some of the fallout from the previous season. You're looking at, just go ahead and say it, you're looking at Tech, Omega, and of course some of these characters like Echo that aren't dead. I guess Omega's not dead either, but you look at these characters and they've either died or they've gone off on their own adventure. So the Bad Batch team is looking pretty slim pickings. When you look inside the Marauder, you're seeing just a Wrecker and Hunter. That's pretty much it, and a Gonk droid as well. So it's really changed from that first season. And I was talking earlier about this actually, that the fact that you see these characters go through such drastic change and their development is so vivid is wonderful. I really like it. The tone of the show has turned something from being that kind of kiddie-esque comedic aspect that the Clone Wars does have. Albeit first that first episode of season 1 had some immensely dark tones to it, and other episodes which definitely felt filler throughout season 1 and 2 certainly are present, where the comedic and younger aesthetic that those episodes usually do have was much more reduced in season 2. And I've been hoping that Travis, if you're listening to this, you get around and you watch season 2, because for me personally, I know I'm biased, and that's just the kind of Star Wars fan I am because I love everything Star Wars. Season 1 absolutely has that kiddie vibe to it, and some of the characters are just super flamboyant in their in their basically the way they act, like Wrecker, and just him being just a wrecking ball and whatnot, and the other characters reflecting their attributes is what I'm trying to say. And they really do a good job at refining that more in season 2. And Now in season 3, I feel like they've really, really landed it. It just feels like they've knocked it out of the park with these characters. And I guess I'll let that segue into the first episode. So, still non spoilers. That first episode was immensely calm, immensely quiet. I really, really appreciated how they kickstarted this season after such a high octane and emotional roller coaster that finale of season 2 was for Star Wars fans. So this episode coming out of the gate was really nice, just to kind of be pumping the brakes and all the excitement, just be really slow, really, really quiet, and just feel like time is not on your side when you're dealing with these characters and the problems that they have as well. Uh, Now, I will say it's interesting to see a little bit of tidbits of what they're trying to allude to. And I say that allude to with what the Empire was doing. It makes me wonder what the show would have done differently if Rise of Skywalker was not the story that they chose. If you didn't have Palpatine and all his weird stuff on Exegol going on, would this show still be doing what it's trying to do? I don't think so. I think it would be tackling a much different galactic scale problem. I think the same thing goes for Mandalorian. While Mandalorian season 3 heavily uh, jumps into this kind of Rise of Skywalker narrative, like background villain narrative. The other seasons of Mandalorian tidbit on a little bit or tiptoe, but season 3 of Mandalorian is wholeheartedly right in there. And so when you have this show as well, it's just a curious kind of thing. Like, what would this show be without Rise of Skywalker to have created this interesting Imperial storyline that, like, why do the Imperials want Omega? What's all this other stuff going on? Why is Palpatine invested so much in this thing here? So there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and it's just really, it is interesting. I like it, and even though Rise of Skywalker is not well received, I still like all this Exegol dark stuff that they've done, and to see it in reflection back in the dark times when we have the Empire rising up from the age of the Republic, the old Republic. I think it's very cool to see the not the stepping stones, but the starting point of this stuff, and to see coming out of the gate, and the people that are involved with it too, because we have some characters in here that are, again, reoccurring from the previous seasons in Bad Batch, but man, they're messed up. But again, these 3 episodes, they really, really do a good job at kind of expanding and showcasing a little bit more of what the science division of the Empire was up to, and it's not good shit, not at all. And I say I was going to be getting into episode 1, but I feel like these episodes are all most likely just going to kind of merge into a blur with each other. So I'll try, in spoilers, I'll try and keep them pretty concise here. So in episode 2, they drift away from what was established in episode 1, and they do a good job at kind of, okay, bring in the action a little bit. And none of these episodes felt like filler, which, for obvious reasons, makes sense. You want your first premiere to just be the hook. You don't have any room for filler episodes or filler content in there. I don't think this season will be devoid of any filler stuff by any means. I think we're absolutely on track to get a filler episode or two, but with what we got in episode 2, I really did appreciate how they expanded the world. We got to see more of what the Empire was doing, and we got to really connect more with the 2 remaining Bad Batch characters. It's you really feel for them. It's sad, and you really, really feel for them, especially just the certain things that they're off doing themselves. When you think, oh, usually this other member of the team would be doing this, but no, now you have in their stead Wrecker or Hunter trying to perform these tasks. That's very different from their usual character attributes that I guess that you'd see them doing these things. So subtle things where they get frustrated trying to pull these things off. There's so many little tidbits that they've done that I really, really appreciate in this world building show. Now, getting into episode 3, they went hot and heavy, and they were reeling you in. They casted that line out into some deep water and had a nice piece of bait on there in a very good way, and just reeled you in, because I was digging this episode hard. It was fantastic. I think that they finally gave us some answers on some things, revealed a little bit of mystery, and just really had a nice sense of optimism as the episode closed out. I'm really curious where we're going to go, because this episode presented not a narrative, but a basic story element that I thought we wouldn't get until a few episodes in, at least. So something that was very short lived, I guess, was present here, but it's changed, and now we're off, and we're off to the races doing something else now with the story. And I really like that because that story kind of wraps itself up and transitions into a new adventure. Great. And it's transitioned for our villains as well in a very, very interesting way that I can't wait to see how this is going to unfold. This episode and episode one both felt like they were just, of course, they were definitely like you'd watch them back to back. Essentially, you could skip episode two if you really wanted to, and episode one and three would work as like a part one, part two, and sort of speak. I wouldn't suggest skipping episode two because episode two is wonderful, but needless to say, episode three definitely serves as a very interesting point for our characters, and it's scary. It's a scary episode with some of the villain stuff going on, and I'm happy to see where this is gonna go. So without further ado, I'm gonna get into some spoilers now. Episode one is called Confined. And so this episode is basically setting up the stage here of the fallout from season two, where you have Omega basically trapped on Mount Tantus in the facility of the Empire, and they're doing all of the different tests. And you see, okay, they're taking Clone's blood, and they've started taking Omega's blood now because trying to scan it. And we get to see Omega is reunited with what was her name? Nala Se, I believe is her name. Let me just confirm here because I got it here. Because she is with, yes, Nala Se. So Nala Se is basically destroying her DNA, and this is something that most people were kind of speculating because they're thinking, oh, is Omega force sensitive? And it would appear that she is, because the Empire is looking to find a high M count DNA that basically can make the jump and work in clone DNA. And I mean, what do you think this is alluding to? Well, Rise of Skywalker, wouldn't you know? There's a whole thing there. So we have basically the pieces here of Omega to become not a Jedi, but a Force user. So her reunion with Nala Se is destroying her DNA, trying to prevent the Empire from knowing that, okay, she's exactly what they need. Again, we thought that this was we thought that they wanted Omega because of what she was capable of being with her DNA, but then we learned that's not why the Empire was going after her. Of course, we learned the Empire just wanted her because Nala Se would then cooperate. So that's why they made such a huge effort to go and hunt her down. And now it just turns out that them taking her in was actually a huge benefit to them, if only they could discover the fact that, hey, she's exactly the kind of M count blood that they need for their whole ordeal Palpatine thing. So there's that. You have a repetition going on in this episode, and I thought the episode was ending, but it's just another day, and Omega's just going through the ropes here, and it just is so depressing and repetitive. But I think it was really filmed in a wonderful, wonderful way that really sells this isolation that she's experiencing here, and the certain things that she's trying to latch onto to retain that basic sense of herself, whether it be Batcher or Crosshair. And Batcher I really liked, and that was such a dilemma when basically they have these alien dogs that they send out to guard the facility at night and whatnot. And so Batcher is much more of a kinder one. And so you have Omega basically taking care of him and whatnot, and then Batcher gets injured. Looks like Batcher's going to be kicked out of the team, going to be executed, and so Omega basically saves Batcher, sends her out there, and then we see more other things that she's doing, where she ends up turning into, or not turning into, but turning to building her own little doll, just to kind of help keep herself kind of getting through the day by day. And the Empire just seems to be going a lot more harder and harder on grilling her and trying to make sure that she stays conformed. But the nice thing with this too is, while they're trying to keep her conformed and whatnot, I believe her name is Dr. Carr. She visits Omega, and they end up finding that she has the doll. And Carr she seems like she's very by the book and very much is kind of back and forth on where I see her standing, because, well, she takes the doll away, she ends up giving it back. But then, of course, which we'll talk about in episode 3, there's a certain situation involving Carr, and it's a game changer what her decision could do. Like the fallout of her decision is very severe. So Kara ends up making a bad decision, well, beneficial for the Empire, bad for Omega. So it's interesting to see that character kind of go back and forth. And yes, we did learn that Kara is actually a clone of Omega. Sorry, they are. Oh, how did that work? Kara is a clone, and they share that same DNA to a slight degree. While Omega is obviously a lot more different in that front. But yeah, so basically, this episode serves as a really good starting point, and I loved how it started too, with the Imperial shuttle crashing on Wayland, and it just was super dark and scary and whatnot. So I'm very happy with this episode. I think it was exactly what the show needs to kind of get us back into the groove of things after such a heavy heart of a loss in that first or that season 2 finale. So overall, really good episode. Our next one is called Paths Unknown. Before I get into this, I'm gonna jump to a quick ad break, and we'll be right back. And we're back. So Paths Unknown was like something right out of like Alien Covenant or Prometheus. This one was freaky, and I loved it. We got to see a lot of really nice world building set up here, because when you look at the Bad Batch currently, it's again, like I said, Hunta and Rekka, and they are trying to track down Omega. So they resort to their old ways of just doing heists and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily for credits this go around. It's like, no, we're doing it for information because we need to find where Omega is. So what do? They go and they do this high stakes mission, and they pull it off. They get this pike, and then they're given from this pirate group a coordinates basically of, oh, what was the doctor's name? Good Lord. Oh, if you know it, tell me, because I have completely forgotten. Oh my goodness. The evil doctor that we see in the show. Oh, it's going to bother me. It's going to. Hemlock. Oh, gosh. Jeez. Hemlock. How could I forget that? So, Hemlock is basically. He's spearheading this, and he's got aspirations, let me tell you. And those aspirations become apparent in episode 3. However, in this episode, we learn that he had another base on another planet. And so the coordinates that the Bad Batch got take them to this other planet. And we learn that he was doing scientific experiments on a bunch of different things. And one of these things was the vines. And so these vines have just been like infesting this area around the abandoned Imperial base. So basically, when the Bad Batch lands, they meet 3 young regular clone troopers, which is very cool. It's just cool to see the kind of like the young troopers again, since I think the last time we saw them was Boba Fett's time in the Clone Wars, or maybe they were probably a lot younger. But these regs basically say like, yeah, we got out of here before they destroyed the base. Our own clone troopers said it was just orders, and they left us, and yada yada yada. So I was really hoping that the one young clone that takes the Bad Batch to the facility was actually going to join their team, because we've lost so many members of the Bad Batch. I'm thinking, okay, this is where we rebuild. We start rejuvenating the ranks, I guess, so to speak. So that's needless to say, that's not the case, but it doesn't dismiss the fact that those characters could come back later on in the season. At the end of this episode, they end up specifying that, okay, we're going to take you guys all to a familiar place, an island and whatnot, which we've seen the island, so we know that it's beneficial and it's safe and it's welcoming for refugees of the war. But I digress. So the reason I think that this episode feels like Alien Covenant Prometheus-y and whatnot is because the baseline is, okay, they've done experimentation, science experiments and whatnot, and so this is turned into a very dangerous place. And after that, you then all of a sudden have the Bad Batch going in, trying to get Hemlock's computer and figure out more coordinates inside here. And when they're going in here, this is like the heart of the alien entity, the science experiment. And so you basically have, well, they do damage to some of these aliens, and the aliens like break apart and turn into like these 3-legged vine things, and oh, it's just brutal. It's absolutely brutal. uh, it's just terrifying because they almost remind me of facehuggers from Aliens, and so they're trying to run and jump on you and whatnot. It's just freaky how they're crawling all over the place, and so finally that transitions, and we eventually bump into what I'm assuming is like the big cheese, the ammo, the mother, like he, whatever it is, it's just like absolutely huge, and it's just trying to take them down. And a scene that reminds me and reminisces sort of like a callback to Pirates of the Caribbean, um, Dead Man's Chest with the Kraken. You get an awesome Kraken sequence here. This thing like putting its teeth up through the water, got full Kraken mouth going on, and it's basically pulling down the Marauder, the Bad Batch's ship. Because at this time, when the Bad Batch was in the base trying to get this data, the other two clones that didn't want to help, the two teenage clones, they essentially got the Marauder, hijacked it, and then flew it over to go and help them. And so there's inspiration from the Bad Batch that kind of channeled into these clones because while the two young clones were saying, hey, let's just ditch them and leave, the sense of loyalty and honor that emanated from the Bad Batch really motivated them. And I love seeing that. And so that's why they came and they saved them, and it worked out for the better. They killed that huge creature thing and flew off into the distance. And they were able to get a loose bead bead loose read on where Omega might be with a coordinate update. So that was all really nice. And we know, okay, that Rex and Echo are going to be coming back for this. They're going to be helping go and rescue Omega as well. So that's pretty awesome. It looks like we're probably going to get like a good team up episode coming up soon. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the episode. So moving into episode 3, I was not expecting this to just unravel as fast as it did. We got Palpatine, we got Project Necromancer, we got so much going on. The highlights for me were obviously every time Palpatine was on screen and he's just talking with Hemlock and Hemlock's aspirations coming through. Or he wants to be the Imperial Science Division like main officer, the head honcho, and he's just charismatically and sinisterly saying like, oh, we could do more if we just had more resources. And Palpatine's like, this is of the utmost importance to our empire. Whatever you need, you'll have it. It's like, holy crap. Okay, yeah, Palpatine's got the resources to spend. So it's exactly what Hemlock is pushing for. He wants all of those resources. All in all, I think seeing the reaction of Palpatine when he gets to be presented with Project Necromancer was great. And just seeing how he handles himself, just kind of like casually waltzing through the Mount Tantus base is eerie, but it's also funny too how this is the day that Omega decides to escape, and for good reason, because the Emperor's here, and that's prompted Hemlock to take Nala Se away so that Nala Se can be there for the meeting. And because of that, it means that Nala Se cannot destroy the blood samples that Omega has taken. And we see, okay, that Omega did take a blood sample because Carr took it, and then basically the roles have switched. Hemlock asked Carr to go and take the blood and do blood tests instead of Nala Se. Well, Nala Se has to stay with Hemlock to discuss whatever with the Emperor. So, fortunately for Omega, her DNA or her blood was the last sample to be checked. And so, before that gets a chance to happen, we see different forms of dialogue between Nala Se and Omega, where Nala Se is like, go to my office, get my data pad, and then get out of here. You have to escape because they're going to find out what you are. And she does just that, not before going to save Crosshair, which I'm glad that she went to save Crosshair. I think that's definitely a must. And he's got so many problems that he's got to work through. But man, that's that one episode in season 2 where Crosshair is working. I can't remember the clone's name, but he just carries that injured clone commander all the way back to base just for the clone commander to die, and they wouldn't give him medical attention. Just a gut-wrenching, soulful, heartfelt episode that was. And so again, you have incredible development for a character like Crosshair, who just wants to be left behind, but Omega refuses. And so while he still exhibits some of his interesting tendencies or attributes as a character, the way he addresses certain situations, which I like, it's wonderful to see him show such compassion for Omega during their escape. Of course, they're trying to escape the day that the Emperor is here. They have a very interesting plan, and it's cool to see the Bad Batch plans kind of coming into play. I think Plan 72. So they managed to steal a enemy ship that was chasing them, and I was not expecting them to actually get away. I thought they'd be trapped on the planet, at least for another episode. But after the Empire tails them and was going to destroy them, they managed to get into hyperspace and escape because the Empire, they yielded off a little bit because you have Carr approach Hemlock and say, "Hey, the testing just finished. Guess who's got a compatible M count for clone DNA? It's Omega." And so they couldn't risk destroying her, which makes total sense. So I think that's basically everything that I covered. All in all, I think episode 3 was definitely a wonderful time. Episode 2 is probably the strongest out of the 3 for me because I just love that setup. I love seeing the Bad Batch in action. I love seeing these weird alien creatures. That was right up my alley. And then I think the premiere episode was it was wonderful. It was eerie, it was calm, it was quiet, and it was subtle. And I think it did a great job at just pulling you in and really feeling the weight of that season 2 finale, the weight of the galaxy and the weight of the Empire. So all in all, I can't wait to get into the next batch of episodes, next Bad Batch of episodes. And I'm probably going to be doing bundles. I won't be doing weekly for this just because they are like 25, 24-minute long episodes. So it just makes sense for me just to kind of cover the bulk of them. So whether it's 3 episodes or 4 episodes, I'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk more about Bad Batch. I cannot wait. And yeah, if you have any questions, send in your questions, comment below. Let me know what you think of the show. I'd love to hear it. So until then, everybody, take care, and we'll see you in the search bar. Have a good one.